Venue here tonight. Hopefully everyone has gotten their ice cream, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And the first thing we're going to do is stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sandy, could we have the roll call?
Councilmember Shippers. Here. Spolman.
Here.
Engels.
Here.
King.
Here.
Mayor Hope.
Here. And at this time, I look for a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended and to move the street closure for the Call to All Festival to the communications as an item. Support.
Councilmember Spolman.
Yes.
Engels.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Shippers.
Yes.
Mayor Hope.
Yes, motion carries. This time, we'll open the floor for our first public comment. We do ask if you come forward, if you would please state your first name and then write your name and address for the clerk. And if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes, that would be very much appreciated. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment and move to the approval of the consent agenda. And this evening, we do have the minutes from our last meeting that was held on July 15th.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Support.
Councilmember Engels.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Shippers.
Yes.
Spolman.
Yes.
Mayor Hope.
Yes, motion carries. And so that takes us to the communications for this evening.
First request is to approve the closure of Lake Street between Harris and Cass from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on August 24th, 2019 for the Cadillac Pride Rally.
I'll make that motion to approve the closure of Lake Street between Harris Street and Cass from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. on August 24th, 2019 for the Cadillac Pride event.
Support.
Councilmember King.
Yes.
Shippers.
Yes.
Spolman.
Yes.
Engels.
Yes.
Mayor Hope.
Yes, motion carries.
Next request is to approve the display of the banner from August 19th to August 26th, 2019 for the Northwest Michigan Veterans Military Expo.
Jeff, could you move the microphone towards Sandy so that people can hear her?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the display of a banner from August 19, 2019 to August 26, 2019 for the Northwest Michigan Veterans Military Expo.
Support.
Robert?
This is supposed to be quite a big event in the community. I know they've been doing a lot of promoting of it, and they're going to have a lot of vendors and information for veterans and veteran services in the area.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shippers.
Yes.
Spolman.
Yes.
Engels.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Mayor Hope.
Yes, motion carries.
The next request is to approve the reservation of the Diggins Hill Tennis Courts Monday through Friday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. beginning on August 19, 2019 for the Caps tennis team.
This is the issue that we talked about at the one meeting. My only concern is closing a public facility for 5 days in a row for 2 hours a day to the general public. I know we want to support the tennis program. We want to make sure that's available. I'm just concerned about the precedent if we do it for CAPS, how we handle other requests, and two, for people that use those facilities to block it off for 5 days in a row. Is that something we need to address?
Well, it looks like, so it would start on August 19th. How long would that run, Marcus?
It would run, generally speaking, until the end of the season, and the season would vary based upon how far along the team makes it. I know that the athletic director from the school system is here this evening. Fred, I'm not sure if you have any comments or any advice that you can offer to the board. If you can just go to the microphone, that'd be great.
Once the season starts, our regular season starts, we won't be occupying the courts 5 days a week because we'll be playing 2 matches a week most of the time, whether it be at home or on the road. But a lot of the times our matches are on the road, so there will be multiple times throughout the season where there will be nobody there. During the course of the week, there might be a practice on a Monday and a Wednesday, and then us having matches on Thursdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays, so there won't be anybody occupying the courts at those times. The other thing that we have right now as a concern is we might not have enough to field a full JV team, and if that's the case, then we wouldn't even utilize Diggins courts unless we held like a quad like we hold early in the year. But you know, other than that, if we have a full JV and varsity squad, then it would apply. But I think the main concern would be the very beginning of that season from the 19th until our first couple matches, which is the following week. So really that first full week from the 19th to the 24th, I think is when Coach Ellenboss was looking to utilize that court or those courts for practices for that time slot. Once we get into our season schedule, you're not going to see the courts occupied 5 days a week. We'll be on the road at venues, and like I said, if we don't have a JV program, then it'll be a moot point, and we won't even need to utilize the courts. What I would like to do is sit down with Coach Ellenboss once we know what the numbers are, and then we can send an accurate schedule as to when we would need to utilize the courts. We could have that up there.
Is that something, so we would be able to post if the tennis team on weeks only needs it a couple days, is there ability for them to post when they need it so people know?
We can post that on our athletic site, as well as if there was a...
I was going to suggest, Mayor and members of the council, if it's pleasure of the council to authorize the usage of the courts for the purpose of the public schools tennis team, we could work then with the athletic department in getting proper signage made that could be used for such periods of time when they're going to be reserving it, versus having a sign there that just blankets the reservation for a 3 or 4 month period.
I think that's a good idea. And you also have some tournaments where when you're at home playing, you actually utilize those courts as well, correct?
Yes, but we only have one scheduled this fall, and that's
okay.
Early in the season. We'll have one tournament, and then from there on, we don't host any Big North tournaments, end of the year tournaments. We really don't want to schedule any tournaments more than we have to, like postseason stuff, just because of the condition of our courts. So until we get those completely renovated, we'll probably just host that one early season one, because we do that every year.
So if I could interrupt you and
Yeah.
just make a clarification for the city council, perhaps then the motion should be slightly modified to simply be a motion to authorize city staff to work with the CAPS athletic department to develop signage appropriately for the reservation of the Diggins Hill tennis courts for the tennis team.
Also, Marcus, do you think, is there a way that we could put it on our website as well as the schools?
Yes, we
when
have
they're not
a community
available?
calendar portion of the website, and we can list when the public assets being reserved or not, as we do currently for facilities like the market and the pavilion and city
That
park.
would be great. Then folks don't come in and...
Yeah, and we can have that arranged pretty easily, I think, between Marcus and I.
I like that.
Yeah. I'd go ahead and make the motion then to approve
Thank you,
Yep,
the request to authorize the city staff to work with the CAPS athletic department in reserving the Diggins Hills tennis courts as needed by the program, and to allow for the posting of the times, the availability of the courts, both through CAPS and through the city event website.
Support.
Councilmember Spelman.
Yes.
Engel.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Shippers.
Yes.
Mayor Filton.
Yes, motion carries.
It's also being requested to approve the closure of Lake Street from Harris to Cass from August 9 to August 11, 2019 at the times requested for the Call to All Family Festival. And the last page of the packet shows the times that are now being requested.
That's much better than what we had before.
Again, I'd like to thank Judy Coffey for getting back with this new structured plan. I think it helps with the flow, helps us make sure we meet your organization's needs, and also keeps traffic flowing too. So thank you for doing that for us.
I still feel like this is a long period of time, though, for the street to be closed. It's all day Saturday, basically, and all day Sunday, and then Friday night. And, you know, this is public infrastructure, it's a public road, and it just seems like it's too long of a period of time to use our resources for this festival. You know, weighing what the festival is and weighing what the public need is during that period of time.
Well, I guess I look at this event and, we closed down Lake Street for the Arts Festival, different group of people, but we closed it down for the Arts Festival from Thursday night, Friday, all day Saturday. And so, I mean, this draws a lot of people. So I don't think I'm opposed to it.
And I hear Councilperson Spolman and have the same concerns as I've voiced. I think if we can, and we're kind of a growing process here of how to handle this with the signs now for the crosswalks that I think are working wonderfully.
Right.
And now when organizations want to close the streets, they're giving us reasons. Saturday, for example, when I saw that there were going to be cars and fire equipment, well, that makes sense if there are things physically in the street, but I think we have ways to deal with loading and unloading that's been used for, that in the future, by asking organizations to say, why do you specifically need the street closed, we'll be able to use greater discretion and not closing them for every event, because I agree with Councilperson Smolman on that point.
So on Sunday, there's a morning worship service. Are there going to be activities? Judy, would you? I've got a question for you. Are there going to be activities all day Sunday too, or?
No, they're not. They're going to be into the early afternoon, probably about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and then there won't be anything until we begin to set up for the evening service around 6, much like Friday night. I asked our group if they wanted me to include that, and they indicated they did. So since I was the typee, I typed.
You typed. Yeah, my concern goes back to how we've redone the whole downtown area, the Commons, and it's not as easy to get around as it used to be when Lake Street is closed. And we've done such a good job of putting, as Councilmember King pointed out, up those walking signs, make sure you stop if anybody's in the crosswalk. So people are slowing down there, which is great, but it allows them to continue to go through there.
My big concern, just let me share about Saturday, is we're planning to host a picnic, which we've had conversation about. We're anticipating around 2,000 people coming for dogs. Okay, but we're also giving out school supplies to the first 500 children who come. And I have a real concern around children moving between, because the school supply pass-out is going to be on the pavilion side of the street, and the bouncy houses are going to be in the dogs on the park side of the street. I don't know, I've watched kids down here,
Right.
even with the street closed. They don't pay any attention to what's going on because they're busy and they're excited.
Would it be possible to make some exceptions on Sunday?
I think Sunday could be utilized a little easier because there'll be children there, but it's going to be a church service, a picnic lunch that people are bringing their stuff for. They're going to baptize in the lake, okay? And then they're going to go home, and then they're going to come back in the evening for setup. We'll need to be starting to set up at 6 and dragging, you know, what this entailed here today. We have to bring instruments and things onto you've done that, T.I., onto the pavilion area. And so it's probably 6 to 9 on Sunday evening would be fine. And perhaps in the morning, I don't know. When I typed it originally, I left off the morning. It only included the evening, but they asked me to submit the whole day. I might add, this is basically what we did last year, but if you recall last year, the streets were closed. We didn't really even need to ask you.
Right.
They were closed without us asking because of the construction.
Is that with the construction, yeah?
Yeah, that was problematic also in a different way.
So what time is the service on Sunday?
The evening one?
No.
The morning.
Oh, the morning one, I apologize. The morning one's at 10 o'clock. And they're going to meet, they'll probably go to 11:30, eat, go to 12:30, the baptism probably till 1:30 at least.
So if we went from 9 in the morning on Sunday until 1:30?
That probably would work.
And then 6 to 9?
That probably would work, Sherry. If you're open to that, that would be wonderful.
I think that, because then the midday, you could
People
still,
can,
right,
yeah.
use the street. Do you want to make that?
I know this is hard because we've had a lot of stuff downtown this summer, a lot of wonderful stuff actually, and it's
We like
hard.
having stuff downtown.
Pardon me?
We like having stuff downtown.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just
Well, I'm
felt
gonna
bad for
go
the
on-
art fair.
I'm going to go on the mayor's word that a lot of people attend this event. I'll make a motion to approve the request from the Call to All Festival as presented for the street closure of Lake Street, with the exception of changing Sunday to 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and then 6 to 9 p.m.
Be good.
Support.
Councilmember Ingalls?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
You could probably, instead of removing all your equipment, if you're going to use the same equipment.
That's part of the problem.
Well, are you using the same equipment or different?
A little bit of it stays, a little bit of it
Because
goes.
you could use those side rooms and lock it up.
Yeah. Al has helped us be able to access it just to put those things in. The ones that are staying, but different bands have different,
Yeah, they do.
yeah, you know that. Thank you for your consideration. We really appreciate it and would invite you to come down and see what's happening. On Saturday, we're honoring firefighters and first EMT type people at 1 o'clock, and then at 3 o'clock, police, law enforcement from all kinds of places, and then at 4:30, veterans. There's going to be a lot of veterans things going on in the next little while here. Thank you, council members. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to the appointment.
Being recommended to approve the reappointment of Greg Bosher to the Downtown Development Authority for a 4-year term to expire on July 18, 2023.
I'll make a motion to reappoint Greg Bosher to the Downtown Development Authority for a 4-year term to expire on July 18th, 2023.
Support.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Shippers,
Yes.
Spelman,
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Mayor Copeland.
Yes, motion carries. And that takes us to the city manager's report.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of the City Council. This evening, I'm very proud to have introduced to the public the newest member of our police department. Prior to making that introduction, I just wanted to remind the City Council that this is all being done in an effort of being more public and transparent and celebrating those folks that decide to commit to our community. In fact, at our next meeting, we'll be honoring members from our fire department that were recently promoted. And we'll have that in our regular meeting location, the City Hall Council Chambers. But without any further ado, our Public Safety Director, Adam Achepka, who will be celebrating his first year anniversary with us later this month, as a by the way, is going to be moving up to the podium, as well as Captain Eric Geller, who has had several decades of anniversaries with this community that he's celebrated. So,
Good evening, Mayor,
thank you.
council members, citizens. It's with great pleasure that I introduce you the newest member of the Cadillac Police Department, Cole Vanderpool. If you'd like to stand up, please. Cole was born in Skokie, Illinois, to Kim and Mark Vanderpool. They moved to Michigan when he was 8 years old. Cole has 2 sisters and a brother. He grew up in Sterling Heights, where he attended high school. He played lacrosse, swimming, tennis, but attributes keeping out of trouble to playing baseball. Cole has longed to become a police officer for as long as he can remember. He is a member of the Army Reserves. He completed basic training in Fort Jackson and completed additional training in Fort Lee. During this time, he juggled his college studies, ultimately obtaining a bachelor's degree in criminal justice with a minor in sociology. Cole attributes his success in life to the support of his family, his parents, and his siblings. His father, Mark Vanderpool, has joined us here today. Hello. Cole completed his police academy at the Macomb Community College. He has recently accepted our offer of employment, and we are excited to have him as part of the Cadillac Police Department team. Cole looks forward to growing and learning in his new position. I am confident that Cole Vanderpool will make an excellent addition to our Cadillac Police Department team, and that he will protect and serve the citizens of Cadillac with the utmost integrity and respect. Sandy, if you could, please swear in Mr. Vanderpool.
You solemnly swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States, that I will enforce the laws of the state of Michigan and the ordinances of the city of Cadillac, that I will abide by the law enforcement code of ethics, Cadillac Police Department code of conduct, and all Cadillac Police Department and City of Cadillac policies and practices, and that I will discharge the duties of police officer.
Captain Eller will now pin Mr. Vanderpool. Congratulations, Officer Vanderpool. Welcome. Thank you.
The applause sounds great in this venue.
Sure does.
Marcus?
Sorry, thank you. The next item under the manager's report is the request to designate a primary representative and alternate to attend the Michigan Municipal League Annual Convention. The annual convention is being held in Detroit this year towards the end of September. I am aware of who is attending and who is unable to attend. So if you're not going to be there, please don't request to be the delegate. At this point, it'd be appropriate for anyone that is planning on going, Mayor, Councilmember Spolman and/or Shippers, to advise if you would be available to be the voting member and the delegate accordingly.
I would think that it would be appropriate for the mayor and the mayor pro tem to, the mayor be the primary and the mayor pro tem to be the alternate.
I'd be happy to do that.
I'd be happy to do that too. What time is that meeting?
Great question. It is in the packet, I believe. The meeting is on Wednesday, the 25th at 4:15 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I can be there. Perfect.
Okay, would someone like to
So
make
I'll
that
make a
motion?
motion to designate Mayor Filkins as our primary representative and Mayor Pro Tem Spolman as the alternate to attend the Michigan Municipal League Annual Convention.
Support.
Councilmember Shippers,
Yes.
Spolman.
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
Mayor Filkins.
Yes, motion carries.
That's a nice breeze.
On to the next. All right. We are flying through our agenda this evening. At this point in time, we're at item C. Item C is a discussion on Michigan medical and recreational marijuana. As the city council may or may not recall, the city offered a public forum. We used the Cadillac area public schools high school auditorium basically about a year and a half ago. Most of the attendees of that meeting were non-city residents. In fact, they were non-area residents. But they came to hear from a representative from Weed Maps along with our county prosecutor about the medical marijuana issue and the potential recreational marijuana issue. Skipping ahead, we then also did a citywide survey. The survey was not scientific in any manner. We added a link in the utility bills that went out to anybody, whether it was a commercial or residential establishment that has a meter with the city, asking them to give us their opinion on marijuana. The majority of the responses that we received back, and we did receive a couple hundred responses back. Mind you, we have several thousand accounts. But the responses that came back said that, generally speaking, they were in favor of seeing marijuana-type establishments occurring within the city, but would be in favor of seeing there to be large distances between those establishments, as well as between those establishments and schools and churches and residential areas along town. And they were also in favor of seeing caps being put in place with respect to the number of establishments that would be permitted within the community. Skipping further down the road or down the line, we had an election last November in which the statewide referendum vote on recreational marijuana was approved through that ballot initiative. Additionally, although the initiative, one could arguably say, failed in Wexford County, the city voters did approve recreational marijuana, not in terms of it somehow being used, but their general sentiment was that they would approve of the use. I believe the city may have been the only municipality within the county in which that vote came back in the affirmative. This evening, we are not in a position to take any specific action tonight on coming out and saying we disapprove or we approve in part, but rather what we need to do is really pick up the conversation. There is no rush, there is no timetable, there's no issue of concern in terms of medical marijuana from the perspective of needing to legislatively do something, because the way that law was enacted, the automatic position was one of being in a default opt-out position. So there is no issue of time in terms of having to do something to protect the interests of the community as a whole with regard to that matter. On the other hand, in terms of the recreational or adult use marijuana law that was approved by the voters last November, there is an issue of time. The state of Michigan issued emergency rules on July 3rd of this year. The governor has also come out and has shortened the time frame for municipalities to put in place their own program, I believe by a month. So by November 1, you have to have essentially your community in a position where you know what you're allowing and where you're allowing it, whether you're allowing any caps on the number of different types of classified facilities or not. Otherwise, you could find yourself in a position where anybody could basically come and put a recreational marijuana use anywhere without any rules or guidance. And I'm kind of generalizing it, but the issue is we need to do something by or before November 1st. There are over 600 municipalities to date that have taken a position of opting out. I cannot advise whether or not some of those municipalities are going to come back and take another look at it, develop rules and procedures for how best to move the item forward. I think several of those communities have taken that position as a way of essentially buying time so that they're not feeling rushed and putting together their own rules of procedure. The city attorney will clarify some of the things that I'm rolling out here in terms of the time issue and really what that clock is. There's also a list that you and I had talked about. Basically, it's, the decision issues or things to talk about are, if this is something that we think we want to get into the business of regulating, then we need to at least provide some guidance that would then be transmitted to the Planning Commission, such as, are we looking at putting any caps in place? If so, how many? Do we have any gut feelings or ideas as far as location? Where would this use best be provided within our community? One other thing, obviously, that I think it might be fresh in everyone's mind is as a part of the settlement for the property on the east end of town, there is a 2.5-year moratorium that's in place. So when we talk about this matter this evening, understand that we're really not talking about it in terms of anything on that site. We're just talking about the other areas of the city. So, Mike, why don't you jump in if you could?
So I think all of the points made by the city manager are correct. The city has the opportunity to regulate this particular use by time, place, and manner. The emergency rules were issued over the July 4th weekend, and so the emergency rules kind of set up this framework where the state has indicated that by November 1st it will be in a position to begin issuing licenses on the recreational side. That presents a problem for those municipalities who have not yet decided whether to or to what extent to regulate that use. Because unlike the medical recreational is you specifically have to opt out, whereas with medical you had to specifically opt in. And so what I have advised all of our municipal clients is that whether or not ultimately you decide to regulate this use by allowing that use, you're in a better position to temporarily at least opt out so that you can then go through that process and regulate the use, provided you adopt some comprehensive policy for doing so. And like the city manager mentioned, any policy of the city allowing that use would likely not apply for a period of time, 2.5 years, to the transferred area that is the subject of the recent settlement on the litigation. And I would note that I think all of our clients, even those that intend to or are going through that process in regulating the use, all of them have opted out thus far in order to give themselves some space in order to regulate the use. Oh, yeah, so I brought a resolution and ordinance that would opt out. You could opt back in at any time once you finish that regulatory process. So I think probably once the city has that discussion, at least in the interim, you are likely better served by opting out in the meantime to have those discussions on the regulation of that land use and to what extent.
Mike, I did the Michigan Municipal League seminar online that Marcus helped set me up with. One of the things that they talked about that people weren't considering was the fact that there is going to be 15% of the revenue throughout the state of communities that are opted in and allow businesses redistributed among the communities that are opted in. And their concern was people opting out and blocking. If you're opted out, you cannot share in that revenue that's going to be available. And part of their suggestion was, and we received, I was showing Marcus the small amount of information that they gave, is they said the most important thing for municipalities to do right now is understand each of the categories of business, understand how are the best ways to be regulated, which now with the emergency rules out, now we're getting suggestions as to how to do that, and perhaps take the time now through November to do that rather than opting out and potentially affecting this tax revenue sharing.
Would that entail some work sessions to go over stuff? How would we do that given this time frame? Because with 2 meetings per month, that doesn't give us much time to really.
So, I think that, without losing any time, if council could provide some good direction this evening about the general flavor of if you think you're going to ultimately want to be in a place where you see this type of use being acceptable in the community, giving some guidance in terms of what type of limitations that you're looking for. We could have an ordinance prepared basically over the next week, I would assume, as I looked at Mike. We could have an ordinance prepared to introduce it on the 19th, possibly. That would then start the public hearing process, and we would also have to start the process with the Planning Commission along a parallel track. The time frame itself requires a public hearing with the Planning Commission as well as you're going to ultimately amend your code, and then the council needs to reaffirm that recommendation and do that via a public hearing. I'm thinking that it's going to take, four meetings? Or do we skip one because of the zoning issue?
Not 4. You'd have public hearing, planning commission, assuming they make a recommendation, then you would have it go to the city council, public hearing. So 3, I'm guessing.
So you're talking about three meetings. We could look at accelerating the schedule. I would need to see a calendar, and we'd have to plan it out. But I think the very first step that we would want to do is to potentially introduce something in a couple of weeks for council to review that would include information that we would be receiving from you tonight that would have feedback. If you are going to limit it, you're going to limit it to 1 or 2 different classifications per type. That's the kind of feedback that we're going to want to hear. And we can get into that detail tonight as far as what those classifications are, so you know what we're talking about. Just as a for instance, we're talking about distribution type facilities, growing type facilities, dispensary type facilities, testing type facilities. There's 2 I'm leaving off because there's 6 categories, I believe, under the recreational marijuana law. So,
Do we need, though, Marcus, to give council time for the information they just got? I've had it
Right.
for several weeks. It's taken me that long to go through it. There are already in the emergency rules, distance requirements, for example, management requirements. Certain facilities have to have special qualified lab managers for them. So a lot of that's done, but I think it's important we understand each one of the businesses before we can make an educated decision as to how, where, and how many we'd want to consider if we want to consider it.
Do we have enough time before November to do that and to do that responsibly? That's my concern. I don't want to have us over the barrel by November. What I'm thinking is, what if we opt out with a goal to look at by the first of the year? Looking at
And to answer your question, Councilmember Shippers, and I don't know if Mr. Homier knows, there was a concern at MML about the revenue sharing. You opt back in, I'm sure you get back into the sharing at some point, but there was the concern that it could be better to be one of the communities that are in from the beginning and being proactive.
But this is revenue that is acquired from these businesses.
Throughout the state.
Does it matter?
state.
Does it matter if you have a business in town, or you're just talking about the people who didn't opt out get the shared revenue, whether they have a business or not?
No, it is based on a prorated share of the businesses that you allow in your community, if I understand it correctly.
My only concern or thought is that, Mike, you just shared how many of your clients have opted out?
All of them, except for one small township.
Okay.
So if I had to guess, I would say 30, 35.
So all of your clients have opted out. I'm sure that they're members of the MML, and it sounds like they're giving themselves time to have these discussions and to understand all of this.
Yes.
The biggest concern, Mayor, was the emergency rules. They were not out when most people opted out. Is that correct, Mike? They had not been issued. The emergency rules just got issued.
Yeah,
So
over
a
the
lot
July
of communities
4th.
opted out prior because there were no rules and they were worried about, they had no idea where it was going to be at.
Okay, so the emergency rules have come out now. Are any of those communities coming back in, making the decision to come back in now that they have that information?
Well, they're certainly having the discussions, but they were having those discussions regardless. It just depends on how quickly they're going to wrap that up, whether they could do it by November or not. I think some of them, it's going to be close.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Steve for the most part. I mean, we have until the second meeting in October to make things happen. If not, we need to get out of it. So not that we're going to be able to rush through anything or get anything done, but we do have until the last meeting in October. And at that point, it would be, we'd have to make that decision if something wasn't in place, or we'd be in a tough spot.
if it'll help the council, perhaps in thinking about this, I can issue you guys a survey. It can be anonymous. It doesn't matter to me. I just need some guidance as to where people are thinking or what people are thinking in terms of how we might best regulate this. If this is something that you're interested in regulating, I can issue the survey out and then ask for some feedback.
Do we want to get started with passing this to the Planning Commission right now? Is that one of the questions that you're asking us? Whether we want the Planning Commission to start working?
There's sort of there's several critical paths, right? So if the council is interested in trying to accelerate a determination on whether we're going to be involved in regulating adult recreational marijuana use, then we need to take that path now before November 1. Otherwise, as the city attorney suggested, we should take the path of putting an ordinance in place to opt out, with then the intent of picking it back up and potentially opting in at a later point in time. To Councilmember King's point, there's the concern or the idea that if we can get our stuff in place now, then you won't miss out on any of the potential pool of revenue sharing from this use. So that's sort of the plus with it. In terms of the Planning Commission and their process, I think it would be very helpful for the Planning Commission if they had some guidance from the City Council in terms of what we're looking at approving. Guidance being, are there general areas in the community that we think would be most appropriate for this use? Those are the things that the Planning Commission are going to need to have their discussions about. Is the City Council thinking that it would put in some limitation in terms of numbers of various facilities? Again, those are things that I think the Planning Commission would want to be they're going to have to talk about. Likewise, how far away should it be from daycares, from schools, from churches and homes?
Those actually are in the emergency rules. Yeah.
So, just some of the details we're going to need, I think, to flush out a little bit in order for us to know how best to move it forward in terms of improving the legislation. So.
I think some of that will be fleshed out once we have a draft in front of us, too.
Right.
If something doesn't feel comfortable, you're going to hear about it from us.
I know I will.
Yeah.
So I guess tonight, the question is should we, should the city attorney and myself be looking at bringing a draft forward at the next meeting? And should that draft be to basically opt in, or excuse me, we're already in, but should it be to opt out, or should it be, if we're going to stay in, should it be to restrict some of the uses? And if so, does anybody have any suggestions this evening in terms of how you might want to see it regulated? Do you want to see a cap? We could come up with recommendations for you to review at your next meeting if that's something that you're interested in seeing.
The ordinance to opt out is already set. It's a pretty standard ordinance to opt out. So to answer Councilmember Spolman's question, I think they would be able to come up, for example, in these materials, they talk about uses in cities that might be good in industrial parks. Uses that are good, depending on the zoning you already have. So if we had a proposal, then we could start to mold that, because those are starting to be shaped right now because the rules are out.
That's a good idea.
And also, it does sound like it's going to be inevitable that we're still going to have to, the second meeting of October, probably.
Well, we have to have a starting point that we all agree upon.
Yeah, I think so, given what we know from our surveys, given what we know from the vote in the community. I think we can move forward with a draft, a conservative draft for our community.
So we can put something together for presentation.
And that's what makes it hard sometimes to talk about a proposal that's not there, or pulling it all out of thin air. At least even if we were completely not happy with it, it'd be a starting point to have something in front of us.
And that's a great idea.
So, I think what I'm hearing from the City Council this evening is put together a draft for us to look at. We'll help fill in the blanks at our next meeting. Be conservative in the approach, understanding that you're going to likely restrict and regulate various aspects of the program. And then in terms of general guidance for location, we'll be able to talk more about that as well when you're looking at the city zoning maps that'll be in front of you, and you'll be able to provide some more of that guidance. So assuming all of that, the action then at that meeting would be to basically set a hearing for your following meeting to approve the ordinance then as amended. So understanding when you see this ordinance as it's presented, it's just obviously in a very rough draft form. We'll be amending it that evening, and then you'd be setting that evening the public hearing for your first meeting in September to adopt it. That'll then obviously put things in motion for the Planning Commission. Mike, am I missing something?
The only thing I would add to that is that I'm not convinced yet that you would have to amend your zoning ordinance.
That's one of the things MML talked about, is a lot of it will fit in to existing zoning regulations.
Yeah, I mean, I can envision a scenario where you have a police power ordinance which allows you to regulate, specifically regulate time, manner, and place, where in that police power ordinance you can simply cross-reference to those districts in your zoning ordinance that already exist without having to go through the planning commission to actually amend your zoning ordinance. So that may take some time off of the calendar in
Yeah, I was going to
terms of
say,
getting
if that's
that.
the case, then maybe we can, we don't have to feel pressured to come up with amendments that we want to move to a public hearing right away. We might need to take a couple of meetings to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've
There's
got a-
nothing wrong with 2 drafts, is there?
No.
No. At the same time, Mayor and members of the City Council, I'd like to perhaps also have a draft regarding the medical side prepared. I think it makes sense, even though it's going to cause some red tape headaches for us administratively. I'd prefer that we do this in tandem so that we're not doing this for the next 6 months.
And I'm only, just because I just went through this. The regulations and the rules now, the licenses are only going to be for 1 year. They have to be renewed every year. The state's going to regulate the license. So the state, anything that we allow in our zoning, if that's how we handle it, the state comes in to make sure they are compliant, both with the state statute and our local statutes. They keep in contact with the municipalities and notify us of any violations or any problems. So we've got oversight that way. Then what MML talked about, and it's important in the information, there is a big difference between the medical and the recreational. If a business wants to have both medical and recreational, they have to be totally separate. They can't just be in the same building. They have to have separate management. They have to have separate inventories. They have to follow regulations. So as Marcus is suggesting, as we look at the ordinance for recreation, it'll help us looking at the medical, but they're going to be 2 totally different
So it couldn't be
ordinances.
under the same storefront?
No. Unless you literally have 2 separate entrances, 2 separate inventories, 2 separate managers and lab technicians.
Okay. All right, so then you will put together the draft for both the medical and the recreational, and we'll start that discussion at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay, anything else on that? Seeing none, the next thing on our agenda is that we have the minutes and reports of the boards and commissions, and this week we have the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Downtown Development Authority. With that, we'll open the floor for the second public comment.
I have one question for Mike Coy, actually.
Yeah.
About the zoning board of appeals. That was the board I used to be on. In the ZBA notes for the variance, you said when it was a 3-2 vote, and you said you didn't know if it could be passed with 3 votes. Did that end up going through, or what did you find out?
What I requested, my opinion was that it had to have a minimum of 4 votes. So I asked for opinion from council, and Leslie Dickinson handled it, and she got back to me and said that I did read the ordinance and the state statute properly, that it required a minimum of 4 votes because we do have 7 members on the zoning board of appeals. So the 3-2 vote was not sufficient to,
Mike, you need to talk into a mic.
He doesn't have a microphone.
The request was denied
That's what it sounds.
because they didn't have enough votes, yeah.
Simply put, our ordinance and the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act specifically...
Mike, you got to talk in.
They specifically talk about a majority vote of the full board, which is 7 persons. We had 5. It was a 3-2 vote. My opinion was, based on the ordinance and the Zoning Enabling Act, was it did not pass because it did not have 4 of the 5 voting in favor. So I asked for an opinion from council. Leslie got back to me, and she basically confirmed that I did interpret it properly. So it did need a full 4 votes, not the 3-2 to pass.
Mike, did it need to go back to be voted on again if the members did not realize that it needed a 4 minimum?
No. Basically, at this point, if something changes, they can come back. So if, for example, instead of 50 square foot, they wanted to come back and try again for a variance, something maybe smaller but closer to what the ordinance allows, something would have to change. But without any type of change in the request, no.
All right, thank you. Again, the floor is open for any public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and then move to a tabled item we had from the last meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The 10th Street vacation item is back this evening. City Attorney has a quick brief regarding its update.
So as you may recall, on the 10th Street vacation, we had requested that the City Council table the matter so we could have some additional conversations with Rex Air, because at least on paper it indicated that there was a driveway or this part of this roadway, public roadway, extended to a Rex Air entry or entrance gate. So we did have those conversations along with conversations with CCI's attorney, and it turns out that there's actually a public driveway easement that is recorded in Liber 338, page 27. And so what we've done is we have draft or modified the resolution and the ordinance to retain not only that easement for a public driveway, but also for any and all public utilities that may be located in that portion that would be vacated. So we're confident at this point that we've retained all of the city's ability to access that property by retaining that easement, as well as consulted with Rex Air on the retaining of that public driveway as well.
So they're going to be able to have their driveway?
Well, I'm not sure that they actually use it.
Oh.
But we have reserved that public driveway just in case the city needs to access it as well.
Okay.
Everybody seems to be satisfied.
That's the important thing.
Yes.
It is. Thank you.
Welcome.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the ordinance vacating a portion of 10th Street and reserving a public utility easement in favor of the city of Cadillac.
Support.
Sandy, before you do roll call, I just wanted to remind everyone I am recused from this vote. We made that motion previously.
Thank you.
Steve's recused. She wants you to make her, she wants us to make a motion.
We did do that.
We did do that when we talked about it.
From last time. Councilmember Spelman,
Yes.
Ingalls.
Yes.
Shippers.
Yes.
Mayor Folkins.
Yes, motion carries. All right, and does anybody have anything for good of the order this evening?
I do. First of all, the After 26 festival was wonderful, well attended, and even with a cloudburst, apparently quite successful. Also, other events at the pavilion on August 17th and August 31st, the Cadillac Mayor's Youth Council is going to be doing a free movie in the park These times will be at 8:45 since it's getting later in the year and it gets dark sooner. So instead of 9 o'clock, it's 8:45. I know on the 31st, we're going to be showing Wonder Park, but I'm not sure of which one we're going to be showing on the 17th yet.
Got a couple of comments. One is related to street closures. We used to have a sign on both Cass and Harris that said something to the drivers coming down this way that Lake Street is closed, so that they were warned before they got all the way down there that it was closed. And I'm not sure that those signs are being used. If they are, they're not being used routinely. I found myself, because I live that way, coming all the way down here the other day and I couldn't get through. And I didn't know that until I got right there. So then I have to turn around in the parking lot over by the lake, and it just causes more congestion. There were a lot of cars turning around because they weren't aware that Lake Street was closed. Do you think we could work on some better communications related to that?
Yes, I'll find out why the signs aren't being placed.
And then the other thing I wanted to bring up again is the traffic on Mitchell Street. And I guess I want to say two things about it. Last week I had the opportunity to sit outside at one of our fine dining establishments and enjoy dinner and a glass of wine with some friends. And we were pretty amazed at how fast the traffic was traveling, how loud the traffic was traveling. A lot of muscle cars or trucks going by, making a lot of noise. And I'm wondering if we could monitor that a little bit better. I know they were going faster than 25 miles an hour, and the thing that really bothered me is, as I sat there and I watched it, there was somebody going across the crosswalk, and she was about 4 steps into the crosswalk, and I about cringed because I could see the cars coming that didn't want to slow down for her. They were driving through like they felt like it was their right to do that, and that the pedestrian didn't have any rights on Mitchell Street. And that's really frightening. I'd hate to see something happen to a pedestrian there. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to beef up patrol of that, to try to make this a more calm environment on Mitchell Street, so especially for pedestrians. That would be really great.
All noted.
In addition to that, we made the observation the other day that there are a lot of bikes on Mitchell Street. And with people coming out of the storefronts, that's really dangerous. And people are ignoring our no biking signs.
Oh, bikes on the sidewalk?
Yep. And so if somebody's coming out of a storefront, those bikes are just whipping along. So if somehow we can hold those bicyclists more accountable to the hours that we have posted.
Yeah, I was going to mention, we do have, for members of the media that are here, we do have signage posted along Mitchell Street about the restriction of bikes on the sidewalk. You know, it certainly does require people to also want to be accountable for adhering to that. Usually, police aren't necessarily getting out of the cars to stop a bicyclist, especially if they're walking the bike. But if they're riding the bike, that would be...
They're riding. I'm not talking about people walking their bikes. They are riding the sidewalk.
Well, you've got your command chain here tonight, so they're hearing this loud and clear.
Great. I also would like to let everybody know that this Friday, 9 and 10 is doing their field day event out at the Heritage House, and it's a wonderful event, and we do it in concert with the Mayor's Fit City Challenge. So I want people to, bring their children, grandchildren, and themselves out and enjoy that day. They put a lot of hard work into that, so it's an enjoyable event. else? Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you.
Ice cream.